that time of the year where things can often heat up when it comes to protests, which can lead to, as in the case over here in the UK, riots, and people choosing to express themselves in a very violent manner and destructive manner. Now, sadly, I personally don't believe that that is a productive way to resolve any any issues or injustices you want to draw a light on. Yeah, it draws a light onto the group, but in terms of practical solutions, I don't think it actually, in the moment, at the time, solves anything. And to add to that, it's very sad that we've had some very tragic things happen over here, as most people over in the UK would have known by now and seen in the news what happened in Southport, and the young children who lost their lives and the people who were injured. It's a totally devastating thing that has occurred. In the States, I know you've also suffered from the, the things that have happened in the schools with the shootings. As you probably know, our culture is more a knife-based culture. For whatever reason, the laws, the politics is slightly different, and we don't have that. We're not a gun sort of culture nation. I don't think historically it's never really been the case. So the weapon of choice over stateside is obviously with legal possession of weapons and guns. You have the gun issue when things really go terribly wrong, like they do on occasions. On our side of the pond, it's the bladed knife, and that seems to be the weapon of choice for anybody who's that far off into a destructive zone to use to cause damage. So I only really wanted to touch on that briefly to come back to the rioting that's been happening. Now, I mentioned in the previous video how there are some social media news networks, and they also say that some of the unrest was fueled by misinformation and intentional incorrect information that was put out over social media to fuel and rattle people and sort of drive people to this really disruptive to cause a disruptive reaction. Excuse me, slightly lost for words on this one. The sad thing I find is you've got a lot of people in fairly powerful positions in terms of having a voice, and particularly the media networks who have a platform, a vehicle, and a way of informing people and influencing people's thoughts, which lead to actions. And as I mentioned in the previous video, sometimes for whatever reason, be it the policy, be it the stance they choose to take politically, some platforms choose to kind of fan the flames and present things in a way that I think will more than likely lead to division. So this isn't a first. It's not, it's not a completely new concept. Throughout history, you'll see there's been times and there's been groups and there's been portions of the population or populations that have been encouraged and, led to believe that one course of action will be the cure or the solution or the way to ease their frustrations. And, and the divide and rule, if you want to call it that, or the there's always got to be a bad guy method of directing people to act as foot soldiers for others who may, and I'm not trying to sound conspiracy theory-ish, but I believe in, cultures and society and politics. There's always somebody who's in a position to, benefit from something a little lower down the food chain that's going to be happening. And in this case, I think when any politicians come out and don't seek to de-escalate or calm things down, or at least recommend less destructive ways for people to express themselves, I think they are on a campaign to gain in some way, be it by like I would say one of our British politicians, recently made politicians, I believe he's kind of taken on the Trump approach without taking it on in a way that will be really positive and beneficial to the people he seeks to lead. I think he's trying to, benefit from disorder. From what I understand, there's extremes in every political arena, and wherever you look, and sometimes you'll get one extreme group that isn't in a position to really go mainstream and convert their voice to incorporate less extreme ends of society, so they become absorbed into a larger, more acceptable, in politics, for instance, political group. And I think some of that's what's happened in Europe, and France is a good example. From what I understand, Le Pen, she began carrying her father's mantle in the extreme right wing end of politics, and to establish the party as a mainstream entity, more open to people from all sections of their society, which you have to do if you really want to capitalize on a larger amount of votes and get your party in a position where they count. They sort of diluted over time and cleaned up their how their party is looked at and viewed, in order to appear to be, or to become, more mainstream. So this is the same thing I think happens in any Western country that adopts or utilizes democracy, and I think we've had a similar thing over here with the three-party system that you could say now is a four-party system, although you get two leading parties, in our case Labour, Conservative, and then it used to be Lib Dems. Now I think it's the Dems and the Reform Party gradually coming up. So other extreme groups probably going to be absorbed into one of those new faces, and Conservatives and Labour do the same thing. They would, you've got some probably people more to the left in the Labour side of things, with more socialistic type views, and they'll be absorbed to a degree into the more mainstream side of the Labour Party. The Conservatives, same thing. You've got people more to the extreme right end of things, and they would also, in some cases, be absorbed into the mainstream, more acceptable face of the two parties that go toe to toe when it comes to who is going to be elected as the one leading group in the political arena. So anyway, just to say that I think some of this extreme stuff that's going on and presenting itself in the form of riots, and then you'll see some particular politicians coming out and in a way sounding like they're justifying the actions, whether they are or they are not. I would think their motives behind that is kind of like the Trump maneuver, the voice for the unheard, the average person, and without being seen to be endorsing any extreme unacceptable behavior, they kind of, the idea is to take that group under their wing and then bolster their numbers. So yeah, it makes logical sense, although I just think it's a kind of dodgy move on either extreme when you start embracing and endorsing stuff that at the end of the day is presented as, you know, the outcome is destructive and negative, and behavior that ends up being harmful to somebody. So I don't believe whether it's the left, whether it's the right, whether it's the this, whether it's the that. It's just, if you're out there doing something that's going to be harmful and destructive to your fellow man and those around you, then, you know, that is just not the first choice of behavior that I would want to promote out there. And unfortunately, we're in that time of the year, just like some years back you had the Arab Spring when the weather's nice. For some reason, it seems to be a little bit more easy to encourage people to meet en masse, and, you know, there's always going to be a bad guy, so there's always going to be a target for the frustrations of the large group or the mob, whatever you want to describe them as. And I just think it's just kind of sad that there are problems, yet every person's going to have something that they genuinely are not happy with, and want to be heard, you know, from their point of view. I don't think, like I said, whichever side you're looking at, I don't think once you start doing harm to those around you, I don't feel there's really much of a way you can sort of get behind that, and thing is, getting behind these things to an extent endorses and encourages it. So it probably just leads to more of the same. And unfortunately, in our media over here in the UK, you seem to have these two fairly powerful online networks that have a big voice and have influential, you could say, influence on people's actions. And they seem to be, I don't know, for whatever reason, excuse me, for whatever reason, they seem to be trying to push things in the direction of some type of disorder and some type of disharmony in various communities. So I just think that's just sad. Yep, it's partly the way of the world, although well, hopefully these things aren't things that become any kind of norm. So protests is nothing new. We've had protests throughout history. Rioting is nothing new. Obviously it's not the thing you want to be promoting, or the acceptable way of expression, although en masse in groups it happens. And hopefully there'll be a less destructive means found soon, encouraged, we hope, but I wouldn't put my money on it, from those who take the position of leading, for people to express themselves, because outside of that, it's just letting off steam and causing damage. And you know, it's generally, it's not a win for any parties involved when it comes down to it at the end of the day. For now, be good, be creative, and particularly safe if you can. We out.